Go ahead.
It was a beginning, and that's what we were waiting for to move towards this beginning part of the process. The thing that we've always asked for, and we're still going to ask for, and we need, is targets that we set between the governor and the House and Senate. Those are key numbers that we have for each area. We're going to continue to push for that. I'm hoping there's some openness. Without that, it's difficult to fit the policy issues or take out policy issues. And so that was what the conversation surrounded. I will say we're going to look at a couple of bills tomorrow to start. Higher ed, and what was the other bill? Ag? Higher ed and ag. So it's begun. The negotiations have officially begun.
So you're coming back tomorrow with
Tomorrow at
your
1
fine
p.m.
three-way?
We're going to keep asking for those three-way targets, and we have to get to that. That's a critical piece that if we don't do that, just like the governor asked us to have targets between the House and the Senate, it wasn't perfect and easy for the House and Senate to put those together. And that's why we need those numbers with the governor. That's the key step that we have to have.
Are you going to proceed one bill at a time, or do you need a global deal? And then
I think ultimately, at some point, we will need a global, joint targets between all of us. That's just kind of the way this works, right? I think what we're going to try to do tomorrow is start with some bills that we think will be a little easier, so we can show some progress and get everybody kind of feeling good about working together and hopefully make some real progress. So that's why we're starting with some bills that look like, when we look at the differences between the House, Senate, and the governor, they look like they'll be a little bit easier to come up with some agreement on. So, but ultimately, we do need joint targets, and hopefully we can get to that agreement quickly. I have been advocating for that all along during the whole session. So I'm hoping we can get there soon, but we're not quite there yet.
Does the governor seem amenable to knocking off a few of the easier bills at the beginning? He wouldn't trade away too much negotiating leverage? You're not hearing that?
Well, we're going to at least try, and that's why the speaker said, what are some bills that we're not way apart, and let's start with those and let's get the ball rolling, and we want to do that too. So I'm optimistic.
So what did you do besides agreeing to take up two bills tomorrow?
Well, we also talked about the need for targets. Everybody was in on that conversation about that. I think a number of people think that that's a good idea. That's not that easy to do, to come up with the targets we all agree with, but that is the step that we have to have.
But there's no agreement on how you go about that?
No, but at least we're talking about the importance of it, and that's a good step.
So is that an acknowledgement that every target that you reach with the governor, your spending is likely going to have to go up and your tax cuts are likely going to have to go down, unless you're thinking that your spending is your bottom line at this point?
We're gonna make progress tomorrow, and I think we're all optimistic about that. I think this is a good opportunity for us to take a couple of bills where we're maybe not so far apart, and if obviously every target affects the other targets, right? So if we spend a little more money in one area, we have to reduce in some other area. At some point, we have to have joint targets across the board. That's really important. So we're working to get to that point.
So is that why you're starting with those two bills, which are some of the smaller bills? Higher ed is a little larger, but means that you don't have to do too much cutting into your tax cuts yet.
Well, in years past, ag has gone right away, and higher ed often goes right away. And so why not take the low-hanging fruit first? I think that's what we're trying to say. The governor's in agreement that we should at least try to do that. Again, we're pushing for the targets, though, because, we're going to fight for what we believe in, but so is the governor. In the end, though, if we don't have targets we all agree on, then we can't get to the finish line. And that's why that's such an important step.
Last week, I think you had 3 different bills as low-hanging fruit. Has the fruit started hanging differently?
We had a list of 6 in there, and we let the governor pick the ones he wanted to work on, and that's what we're going to work on first.
So these were the governor's choices?
No, I think the senator suggested that.
Well, I had 6.
governor
I had
agreed.
6 that I suggested, and these were the 2 that he wanted to take first, and so we're going to take them.
Speaker, is the governor engaged?
Well, we'll see tomorrow at 1 o'clock, right? I mean, really, that's when we'll start negotiating. And I think at some point, we all need to sit around a table, roll up our sleeves, and start working out the differences, right? And the longer we wait for that to happen, the more difficult the job becomes. And the less the public is involved, and the less the rank and file legislators are involved. So I don't like that process personally. I think I've been pretty vocal about that, but I do respect the governor, and he has asked us to do some things, and we have done them. And you know, we have to find budget bills that the governor will sign. That's how this works. He also has to get us to send him bills. He can't pass his own bills. So we have to work together. And Minnesotans elected us all, and I think they're confident we can work together. And I agree with them. I think we can.
Mr. Speaker, did you in the discussions today re-emphasize to the governor how important substantial tax relief is, or didn't that come up in the
No,
discussion?
I wouldn't say that we got into, you know, our differences or visions. I think we can all see each other's visions for how this, the resources that Minnesotans have so graciously provided to us should be spent and should be used. And obviously we have some differences in how those resources should be used. And we will spend some time doing that, but we know where we disagree. I think we ought to spend more time talking about where we agree and building on those areas. And so we didn't have ideological conversations about why we're right and they're wrong, or why they're right and we're wrong. We just don't feel like that's productive at this point. So we're ready to roll up our sleeves, we're ready to get to work, and we're ready to pass a budget that the governor can sign and that Minnesotans will appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you.